it is, I think, the best result if we have an idea who's in the room without having too much time, but we are very much focusing on empowering business and corporate leaders. So I would love to know by hand who is in a way or another a business and a corporate leader. Would you please raise your hand? Thank you very much. Okay, so we just stay on the same in the same flow that we wanted. I'm happy, and with respect to the time, you realized last time the time was very short. So I start now again to recap a little bit for you where we are. Very briefly, we are initiating a coalition because we think it's better together. Yeah, because the challenges are huge. And there are 3 elements, again, from the main stage that I want to just refresh. It is the leadership that we believe is very important to empower individuals to pioneer and go, especially leaders in their businesses, in their companies, and do anything we can do to support them to get nature on the agenda and nature in the boardroom. This is number 1. Number 2 is we know we need to bridge between different stakeholders in this process to be successful. And the third one is when we have successfully managed to get these 2 things together, there's a third component which is very important. We need to know what we do. So if we want to do it, if we have the right thinking, the right mindset, the right narrative, the right people, the good energy, the yes, I want to do something, it's very important that this is relevant and good. Yeah. So this is what we look at right now and how we approach it. So I think I have to say only this last, or share this last slide with you. From our perspective, there are 2 things. One thing, and this is something we started already. We convene the conversation. We want to shape the conversation. We started with a first CSO roundtable. And there are more roundtables to come. And this is a very important and very relevant format, we realize, because we talk about the challenges in language and we talk about different workarounds or potential collaborations, and we really look also not only in our or in the supply chain, also a little bit outside the supply chain. What are opportunities for business that support the biodiversity and nature agenda? A second element, a second product, or a second solution to get into action and not only to talk is that we want to have a real commitment and create a real forward commitment. Yeah, this is the expected outcome from our strategic dialogue. Same way as Madam President Ursula von der Leyen mentioned today with the farmers. This is what we want to offer for CSOs and company leaders. So, and to learn, collaborate, and the most important thing is to act. I'm happy that the room gets even packed now. This is great. Thank you very much. So these 2 things is what we focus on. We will not talk a lot about the round table now. We will talk very much now and look a little bit to Julia. And Julia, next to me, I'm very happy, Julia, that we have you here, spontaneous. I'll put the mic to the computer then when you will talk, because we are a little bit with the tech a little bit behind, yeah, but I think this will work out very well. And this is also, I think, in a way to start this session. Now people are still coming in, Julia. You know, I keep you a little bit up to date and I stand next to the screen so that you feel like part of the situation here. And yes, I hand over like the talking stick to you now to present a little bit and share what is happening in reality, because what we do here is just inspired also, but what you do over there. And so we are really, really happy that also like in the last weeks and stuff that you supported us and you share anything, and we are on the very same mission. And so we are very excited now to listen to what you do and why your leaders and who are the leaders and what are they doing in the US as an inspiration to start this breakout session. Thank you very much, Julia, and you will have the chance to get some questions to Julia afterwards. I try to be a kind timekeeper. Thank you, and over to Julia.
Well, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Yes.
Very good.
Thumbs up. Can you see my face? Because I know I have slides. You can see my face. Yes. Well, hello from Virginia in the United States, and thank you so much to Good Carbon for their leadership in convening this conversation. My name is Julia Strong. I'm the Executive Director of Symbiosis Coalition, Advanced Market Commitment to Catalyze the Next Generation of Nature-Based Carbon Removal that was launched at the end of May 2024. I'm going to tell you a bit more about the coalition, how it came to be, what we're focused on initially, and invite any interested buyers, others who are interested in learning more to follow up with me afterwards as we're growing the coalition and eager to see how we can collaborate with Good Carbon and others to grow the call to action for nature. So I'll briefly say why symbiosis, what it is, and how to get involved. So I won't belabor this point. I think you've spent a lot of time at DLD Nature talking about why we need to invest in nature. We cannot meet our climate goals without both investment in nature protection and restoration. Just nature restoration alone in forests has the potential to catalyze 3 gigatons of carbon removal by 2030. But there's a big funding gap for nature-based solutions today. We only have 200 billion out of the 600 billion that are needed by 2030. Most of that comes from government sources, public sources with some private sources, but we can't catalyze the amount of impact that we need without strong corporate leadership and action. Carbon markets, when done right, can help the world meet its climate and nature finance goals. The potential to unlock 19 billion in climate investment, that number varies depending on what estimates you look at. It increases near-term corporate action, financing innovation, and I don't have to remind you all here in the room, it also finances critical benefits to people, biodiversity, and ecosystems that we depend on. But high-quality nature-based carbon removals face a number of barriers to scale today. There's no universally accepted quality framework. There's confusion both around the world around what does good look like. And that means that higher carbon credit prices for exceptional projects are harder for buyers to justify paying. Procurement teams internally for corporates are bandwidth limited. These projects are complex. They don't have the resources to build out teams that are large, that know all the different ins and outs of these projects, and invest in the time it takes to make these projects as high quality as possible. There's uncertainty around demand and willingness to pay. Without a clear demand signal, without a signal from corporates, project developers are unsure about what to build, and investors are on the sidelines because they don't know that they actually can get a return for their investment. So there needs to be a signal about that there's demand and that there is a willingness to pay the price it takes to make these quality projects happen in order to get these projects off the ground. And that lack of demand and uncertainty around willingness to pay leads to difficulty accessing upfront financing. Any financing that's available today is very expensive, which means that there's fewer dollars going to these projects. So Symbiosis Coalition was founded as a coalition of buyers dedicated to growing the supply of high-quality nature-based carbon removal. We aim to catalyze the supply and unlock upfront lower-cost financing for the next generation of high-integrity restoration projects that struggle to access financing today. These are ones that prioritize compensating and equitably engaging Indigenous peoples and local communities, that promote positive biodiversity outcomes, and that rely on the latest science and data for highest integrity climate impact. The commitment, as announced in May, is for up to 20 million tons of high integrity nature-based carbon removal under contract by 2030. I say committed to date because we're looking to grow the coalition and grow the scope of impact. It consists of 4 different pillars. One is that action-oriented offtake commitment to show that demand signal, as I talked about. 2 is unified quality criteria, building on best existing standards and incorporating the latest science and technology and data with the intention to update that continually over time. The 3rd is a joint RFP to facilitate identifying and sourcing of these projects and translating that commitment into signed long-term offtake agreements that can be catalytic to drive and unlock follow-on financing. And the 4th is market development. We want more project developers to be able to meet this quality bar, more investors investing in these projects, and more impact on the ground. So we really want to share our lessons learned transparently beyond the coalition and share guidance as well. As I mentioned, we're dedicated to the highest quality bar for planet and people, integrating the most recent science and data on climate impact of restoration, while equitably involving and compensating Indigenous peoples, local communities, and supporting positive biodiversity outcomes. We aligned on these quality pillars. The first is conservative carbon accounting. The second is durability, investing in long-lasting projects. The 3rd is social and community benefits. The 4th is ecological integrity. And the 5th is transparency. A big thing that's missing in the carbon market today is the transparency around what's working and what's not, in order to ensure that we have the lessons learned to improve and iterate over time. We launched with quality criteria for restoration and reforestation. These are some of the experts that informed that quality criteria on the right. I won't go into the highlights of this. You can find this on our website, but it builds on the latest standards with a preference for native species and contribution for the global biodiversity framework. Our goal is to continue to raise the bar on quality, to help contribute to a universal quality standard, and work with the existing standards, ICBCM, Vera, others, to ensure that there's less confusion in the market and we can translate learning into action. We're going to recruit a respected independent technical advisory board of NGO experts, academics, researchers to advise the coalition and its members. We'll update our quality criteria on an annual basis at minimum, publish guidance and lessons learned, and as I mentioned, contribute to advancing consistent standards and guidance. We're launching our first RFP at the end of 2024, focused on terrestrial reforestation and agroforestry, following that with a mangrove-focused RFP. So if there are companies out there who want to get their hands dirty right away and be part of this, please come talk to me. And then we'll, as I mentioned, for that 4th pillar of market development, we're focused on educating both investors and project developers to increase the available financing and get more project developers able to meet this bar. We're open, as I said, to other mission-aligned buyers who want to take a leadership role in driving impact today for climate, people, and nature. As David, I think, has referenced earlier in the day, and I really respect Good Earth for this leadership around, we need radical collaboration. It can't just be tech companies, it can't just be US companies. We need to all join together to help to advance this global aspiration, this global goal, and work collectively together to ensure there's less confusion, more action, and higher quality impact for people and nature. So please, if you're interested in learning more about symbiosis in particular, and how to join, as well as exploring the effort that David and Jerome and others are shaping, please don't hesitate to contact me. I have my email up here, and look forward to the conversation today, and really appreciate the chance to present. Thank you so much, Jerome and David.
Radical collaboration. Dankeschön. Thank you so much, Julia. Cool.
If it's helpful.
It's everything perfect. So what I do now, I have this time thing here running. 2 crisp questions, or later, or by email or something, and off we go. Julia, you get in the listening mode. Is there a question? There's one.
Hi, Julia. Nice to meet you. This work is super, super important. I mean, which platforms are you trying to gather? Are you focused on companies like David's? Because I see a real strong argument for bringing all these new technologies together to create standards, but also, more importantly, to create the market that we want to see emerge faster than it otherwise would emerge. Is that your primary objective as a business?
I'll wait until I get the microphone. David, you're going to get some good exercise, David. Thank you for that question. And we're focused initially as a membership on end buyers, so those companies that would invest in and retire credits on their own behalf, with the goal of creating a big demand signal. One of the challenges in the carbon market today is uncertainty around demand. Are there buyers who are willing to pay the prices that it takes to make these higher quality projects happen? And what degree of demand is there? If these are restoration projects that we're investing in today that won't start producing credits 5 to 7 years from now, there needs to be confidence from the investors and the project developers that there is an end buyer who is willing to sign a long-term offtake agreement that helps to de-risk the project and drive further investment. So our membership is end buyers. Again, beyond just, if you so happen to launch with tech companies, but we're open to more than tech and more than just US-based, but we recognize it's going to take a whole ecosystem approach, right? This is a problem that there are multiple pieces of the puzzle to solve. I like to say symbiosis is one piece of the puzzle, and we're eager to collaborate with folks like Carbon Earth and others to ensure that the whole ecosystem is operating in a high integrity, scaled, accountable, and transparent way.
Thank you so much. All the rest, and there will be more, we collect, we share later. I give the talking stick now to directly... Oh, there's one more question? Sorry.
Hi, this is Stefan from the Global Nature Fund. We've been studying that market for 12 years, the same intention as you get private funds into the nature conservation. When you look at it, it's tremendously challenging. And I suppose you know the challenges related to nature-based carbon sequestration. It's about permanence, it's about robust data. You can solve this, but our experience is it makes, let's say, whatever the project or the credit quite expensive. So you raised it just the demand. I mean, how do you address that? Because I would guess with your high quality approach, there will be definitely a higher price than what you can get somewhere else. So is there already a commitment from your potential buyers that they will pay a higher price?
That's such an excellent question, and you're right that high quality projects that take a leading role in incorporating and equitably compensating indigenous peoples, local communities, that promote positive biodiversity outcomes, and that are focused on durability, that take conservative approaches to carbon accounting, that they're likely to be more expensive than other projects. And there's also, as you know, different factors that drive the price of any given carbon credit. Is the land acquired or leased? Which geography is it in? And the cost of financing actually can drive 30 to 40% of the cost of a credit. So we need to be able to figure out how do we unlock lower cost financing in addition to increasing willingness to pay among buyers for these really high integrity credits. And one of the ways to decrease financing costs is by de-risking these projects through long-term offtake agreements and through getting more certainty for investors. So we are a coalition of large companies. That price is a touchy subject in terms of stating a particular price. We wanted to, when we launched, indicate a willingness to pay the price that it takes to make these projects happen, and to communicate that we understand, to your point exactly, that these projects can come at a significant cost. We'll hopefully be able to transparently share more information about that over time, but that just to share that answer.
If I may add something, Julia, very briefly, and this is this is the target, the coalition approach. Then there is a price sensitivity in the US, which is different to Europe, maybe even different within Europe, and so on. And the prices, our whole work and what we do for the nature-based is we try to send this strong price signal, and we try to create enough data and transparency to argue for this price. And we are, I can share this, relevant quantities transacting now one by one, not as a coalition like Julia already, but what we do with goodcarbon here in Germany is already up to 30 euro per ton. Yeah, so we are not talking this 5, 6 something and let's buy some credits cheap. Yeah, but the most important thing, and now I would take this, Julia, and push the time and give the talking stick now to Dr. Nicola Rodewald. I'm so happy that I met her. Julia, I think this is still for you, or maybe you share it now a little bit with Nicola. Then doctor, now come all the doctors, Sebastian Brandis from Menschen für Menschen, which is here in Germany, everybody knows Menschen für Menschen. And also to Dr. Martin Schaefer, sorry. Thank you. There he is. He just has something on his neck, we need to run with the time now a little bit. To have a deeper dive and look on what quality projects look like. Yeah, so this is it, and then you just stay with us here, Julia, and if you talk, we can hear you, so just feel free to join our round here. Over to you, thank you, and I stay here.
Yes, thank you very much. Welcome from my side as well. Yes, like David said, we wanted to take a deep dive into some very concrete projects because this is then more about very practical approaches rather than theory and talking and hopefully many promises. And we wanted to take that opportunity also to stress the quality criteria. We've heard it from Julia and also from many others that quality is essential, and we all know many reasons. I want to stress two. One is we are talking about a positive biodiversity business case, so that means that corporates, investors, buyers should really benefit from any projects that they're investing in, and certainly cannot face any reputational risk. So this is one very strong argument for very high quality projects. And to us, I think all nature lovers here, the most compelling argument is, however, to really create very high impactful projects that really not only impact climate change mitigation, but biodiversity enhancement, and of course the local communities which are deeply connected to each other. And we would like to show that with the help of some examples in different regions. I did put up a little framework overview of many other quality criteria. You can see the impact dimensions, which are important. Risk, we talked about risk just before, that needs to be mitigated for high quality projects, as well as, of course, integrity. We won't dive into the details, but I want to stress again that it is really important to understand and to make that quality transparent, to make these impactful investments. This might be a little scary for some people, but luckily there are frameworks out there, like Julia already mentioned, and there are also from other organizations frameworks out there that can be useful. And there are experts to help you guide through any quality criteria. So this is the little intro on quality again, and now going to the different projects. We have 3 different projects from our 3 different partners in different continents, and now I hand over for the first efforts in Ethiopia with Sebastian Brandis.
Thank you, Nicola. Yes, hello everybody. It's quite amazing, you know. David called me like 3 months ago, and I said, who are you, basically? And he said, we need to talk. So it's very fresh to us, and why are we standing here? I think the key question is we need to transform the narrative. Now, Menschen für Menschen, let me start, has a different history, as we have talking today. Why did many nature-based solutions projects fail? And why are we still discussing it, even though we know the problem? Because everybody starts with restoring nature. And that's the problem in many of the cases in those countries where they do it. It all starts with a human being. And that's what people, I think, misconcept in many cases. And especially when you see the mechanistic way of doing it, even look at the UN organizations, they're all, one is for water, one is for your children, one is for things, that gets me always crazy. Because on the ground, it's all interlinked. And solving the biodiversity crisis is always solving the human being situation on the ground, because they need to survive. It's a nexus between human and nature that we also need to solve. And that's why we, as Menschen for Menschen, when I started this, took over seven years ago, coming from the business, by the way, and actually I'm a theoretical physicist from background, so it's a bit completely awkward. But I said, oh, I'm in the wrong camp here, because I work for Menschen, but everyone talks about climate. No, it's actually the right camp, because why are we here? Because of human beings, so creating the problem, and we are here because we need to solve it for the human beings, because the planet doesn't need us. The planet will recover itself. So it's actually Menschen. Thinking it this way is the only way of solving it. Now, I took a few random pictures. By coincidence, I found all of them being really interlinked to their own nature. You see, they have an attachment to their nature still, because they live. There's a fisher, there's somebody in one of our nurseries. I love nurseries, tree nurseries. They're also so structured. And a woman carries actually a plant. Somebody lives from the straw, from the things. And those is, just like the coalition idea. That's why I put it there. And I love those guys. And beehives. So we start from the human being. And the second key element is, and we talked about many quality parameters, but I'm trying to pick two, is think holistically. When we started 40 years ago, I'll talk about this in a minute, thinking holistically, saying we can only solve it sustainably if we tackle everything the human being needs on the ground at the same time. It's a very simple solution. If you need to build a school, but the water's still dirty, the women still don't get to it because they don't feel well. If you give them vegetables and you start doing vegetables, but they can't calculate, they will still be screwed in the marketplace if they cannot. So it's all interlinked. And ecosystems only develop sustainably if you think them holistically. So that's why we start from the human being, and we are in Ethiopia. And why Ethiopia? That's historic, actually, because in the 80s, nobody's so old like I am to know this Wetten das session from 1981, where Karl-Heinz Böhm, the founder, you don't have to display, it's okay, it's fine. Karl-Heinz Böhm, the famous actor here, went into a betting show on TV and said, he was frustrated, not because of pity, by the way. He was angry about the fact that at the same time we were world export leaders in weapons, at the same time, people were dying in the street. It was a time when the pictures of hungry and dying children were on TV everywhere. So he stood up and said, I will go there personally and be there for half a year. And he got 1.2 million Deutschmarks, so €500,000 euros those days, to start to be there half a year. In fact, after 40 years, we invested more than 500 million euros and served some 6 million beneficiaries. So Ethiopia was historic because at that time it was the place of hunger. But at the same time, luckily, it turns out to be also a biodiversity hotspot. It turns out to be a place where reforestation is absolutely necessary. Not afforestation, but reforestation, because there was a 40% coverage. We're not doing things that other projects do, try to make bare land into forest, which is ecologically wrong. We're trying to reforest what was a forest 30 years ago or 100 years ago. It's fairly politically stable, even though the Western media make you believe it's not. But if you have a lot of people on the ground that are all locals, they know how to do business. We do this in 40 years. And it's priority for the government, which helps in this case. They have a big program, reforestation, Green Legacy. And it has even now, and that's why the timing is so perfect, it has since 4 months a very favorable legal framework for VCM, which means most of the money goes to the local community. So we have a very transparent way of pending the money where it goes to where it's needed. So just to conclude in one slide, because we have other projects to go, why we, and it can't read, it actually says Menschen is been there for a long time. But anyway, we have a 40 years track record. We have about, as I said, we have invested 500 million in local communities. So we always work holistically. We have forested already about 15,000 hectares in 40 years, and I would call it a factor 4. I want to do the same number of hectares in 10 years now, so squeeze it to a quarter of time. We have I was surprised to be there, a very hyper interpretation. Actually, when I come there, everybody knows Karl-Heinz Böhm, more than here actually. is a statue. There's even a Karlsplatz in Addis Ababa. And it's a bit scary because it reminds a bit like the GDR times. It was like the Honecker pictures everywhere. It's like very similar. It was actually from those. It was actually the time when this was created in the 80s and 90s. Oh, no, 80s. So that's where it came from. He was the first non-Ethiopian person getting Ethiopian citizenship. Actually, many of the children were called Karl in the rural areas where he went, and they were born. So it's a bit scary. So, we have to go through a transformation, though. That's maybe my last point. We as our Stiftung, in fact, that we are a foundation is a bit of a historic accident. I think we're actually an operational entity. We have 600 people on the ground, all Ethiopians, all living with the community, apart from 5% that sits in headquarters, social workers, development agents, who day-to-day live with the community to transform the situation. And we need to transform. You won't find any word of poverty in my slides anymore. I always talk about prosperity, because looking at Africa at a different angle. I come from business. I say we have to get rid of this Africa as a deficit continent to an opportunity continent. And this is an amazing opportunity. And we have to transform by transforming the communities, giving them alternative income generation activities, changing the socio-economic model for the farmers so they have an interest in protecting the forest. Very simple examples, make them be beekeepers, and they understand the forest to be not a consumable anymore, but an asset. So it's an economical decision for every farmer to do so. And that's the way. So planting trees, I get really nervous when people say, well, planting 1 million trees. I don't care. It's a question, how do you get this economic system so that the plants will come back alone? If you make the system so that the population cares, and we've heard about this a lot, on the ground. So that's why I think my final message is, there are solutions, high quality. We can act now at scale. Thank you very much.
I'll give you this.
Well, wonderful, Sebastian. Thank you. I'd like to emphasize impact from a slightly different angle, and then we're still going to see that in the end you have to integrate humans and nature. So I'll take you from Africa to South America. Very funny that David introduced me at the time when he was saying you have to run. Yeah, funny. But in South America, where we're working on the west slope of Ecuador, which you see on the top left, Western Ecuador lost 95% of its forests within 50 years. So now we are in a region where you have 3% forest cover. Compare that to Europe, you've got 10 times as much. That means that by now we are down to very few forest fragments, and they still got cut down at a rate of about 2.5% per year. So as long as you maintain forest cover, then Sebastian is right, the trees come back on their own. Once you are down to 3% forest cover, trees won't come back on their own because the land is degraded, it's compacted soils, and the environment is impoverished. So impact is really seen here on a regional scale and on a global scale. So in this area, here you see the forest being cut down. This is the last forest remaining, this green patch over here. It's about the size of the Saarland, so it's sizable. It's worth fighting for. And as companies such as this one erase the forest, they are cutting down the tree of life. And that is what you need to understand, because in this area, on an area of 10 hectares, which is just 1 kilometer by 100 meters, we got more tree species than in all of Europe. And 25% of all the plants growing there are not found anywhere else. This is what we are destroying today, and this is the basis for our medicine, and this is the basis for our diversity and the intangible value and wealth that we as humans need to preserve. So, impact, you go to those high biodiversity hotspots and you're gonna have impact, and you can see it, and you can see it much better than in carbon. You can see it on biodiversity. This jaguar down here, she hates our camera traps. Every time she finds one, she just bites them through. And I'm collecting them now. It's gonna be a wonderful art collection. But again, it shows a quality sign for any carbon project. In these forests, we've got about 565 tons per carbon in above ground standing biomass, so it's carbon rich, but your best sign for quality is biodiversity. It's not the carbon. And we can go from local to regional. In this area, we work on a scale of 5,000 square kilometers, so it's twice the size of the Saarland, and on an elevational span from the lowlands up to the Andean peaks. So you're going to preserve all the ecosystems. You're going to preserve the water that 1.2 million people depend on for the living. You're going to preserve the natural resources that all of us need, particularly those people there, and here come the people, who live of it, who live of the land, for their agriculture, for their subsistence. And therefore, what we really need to do in terms of impact is a sustainable regional development where you have some core areas protected for nature, but where you invest into the regenerative agriculture in all the buffer zones around them. So this is what we're doing with a coalition of 25 companies and NGOs. We just got 20 million to start with this. And then you go to the communities and you start asking, what are your problems? What are the problems you want to solve? And then there will be some you can't address. But there will be some that you can inevitably address. And key things here is we work with an indigenous tribe. They were hunter and gatherers. They don't have a strong agricultural history. So by simply showing them how to prune cacao trees, we could increase the harvest by 80% within 6 months. And we did something similar on the Galapagos, where we eradicated rats, invasive species that we brought to the island and that imperil the wildlife. And in the moment we got rid of the rats, all the farmers were happy. Harvest automatically increased by 80%. So again, that shows how intricately linked nature and humans are. And therefore, there is a huge potential to work with these communities because they are marginalized and to help them increasing their livelihoods by getting more income. That, again, is a sign, sure tell of quality and impact. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Martin and Sebastian. Last but not least, another project, another continent, another ecosystem, which is not coming up. Where do I have to point it? Okay. So now we're going to India, west coast of India, where there is a very large coastline across the state of Gujarat. And there were mangroves before. Now, due to very high salinity and other factors over the past decades, mangroves have been degraded. And there is a project at the moment being launched, which works again with communities on the ground. Actually, it's implemented by an NGO who has been working for 40 years with marginalized communities. So you can see parallels between the projects. But very different settings. And these marginalized communities are now integrated, are now leading this project to replant mangroves, to recreate an ecosystem across the coastline, which serves many, many purposes. One is also to support their livelihood, but also to create a bioshield to protect the coastline and all the villages that are just across these coastlines. And it is a very large-scale project, which is very welcomed by a very large group of communities who are participating. And it is quite wonderful to see the engagement, not only from the marginalized communities, but also in the educational sector, for example, schools who are being included, so that the whole awareness of this importance of nature and biodiversity is created. And it is also a very good example of showing how communities grow together to really achieve something of this great scale. And I wanted to point out, we talked about quite a few different quality criteria and impacts. Wanted to point out one other aspect which hasn't been mentioned, but is also very important when you talk about climate change. A lot of projects aim towards climate change mitigation, which is of course very important, but we also have the aspect of climate change adaptation, especially in the locations where climate change is already having its devastating effects. And this is certainly one region which is hit by larger, by stronger cyclones on a regular basis, and therefore the land is being flooded. They're losing, people are losing their agricultural land and their livelihoods through that. And by building this very, very huge bioshield in front of the coastline, it actually gets protected, and people can save their homes and can stay in the region where they chose to live. So this is another aspect which is also a very important factor that shouldn't be overlooked and that should be included whenever possible in very high quality nature-based solutions. And just maybe one more time, the point on revenue sharing or community impacts. Just wanted to point out again that a lot of projects are talking about social impacts, but it's very important to really dive into the details and understand what social impacts really means for each of these projects. Sometimes it only means to create 4 to 5 jobs, if I may be very blunt, and other projects are really all about integrating and empowering these communities. And this project, for example, has founded a methodology also to certainly give back to the marginalized communities, because that's also something it's quite complicated sometimes. How do you channel the money to the groups most in need? Even if you give it to community, it doesn't always mean that really the marginalized people are going to be benefiting, and therefore this project is creating a fund that will help specifically projects and efforts and approaches that will be targeted for these marginalized people. So just some examples across different regions and approaches. We hope that it gave you some insight, some feeling on high quality and how it can be done and should be done. And yeah, we'll be very happy to discuss this further also after the session. And now hand back over to David to close the session.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you. Thank you for your attention. We wanted to have it much more interactive with questions and stuff, but we run against the time. And I think it's very important that my dear friend and co-founder, Jerome Cochet, is bringing us structured to an end. And please, it's only 3 more minutes. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, I try in 3 minutes. Thank you for sharing the project. I guess nature is beautiful, but what my heart and my voice also makes a bit, wie sagt man, zum Stocken bringen, when we talk about the project, is that we impact people on the ground, yeah? And impacting 26,000 families in India, which is 50,000 people roughly, or even more, is something which is hard to build up an employer who has the same impact on the ground somewhere in regions which are marginalized. But nature is not only beautiful, nature is not only touching our hearts, nature is also part of the solution. And in the last 3 years, when David and I launched goodcarbon, it came under the bus quite a bit, right? And you wonder, why is nature so looked at so skeptically, especially by corporates? Well, one reason is because there have been black sheeps and a lot of bad things have happened, which basically caused the mistrust in the market. And therefore, I'm so glad, Julia, that you also are here with us today, because the leadership of companies who have a voice in the market to demonstrate that they are basically standing behind nature and that they are seeing nature as a solution is fundamentally important. That's number one. Why is it important? Because companies are part of the solution too. It's not only nature which is part of the solution, companies are part of the solution. They have the money. David talked about this earlier. And therefore, a coalition with the coalition is such an important thing because it helps us to move collectively. Rebuilding nature is non-differentiating. It's for no company, for most of the companies, it is not a differentiating competitive element. So it's almost ideal to cooperate. And I think what Symbiosis has done is fantastic. It's sending a signal which goes up to Japan. And we're talking to a Japanese company saying, if Microsoft does it, we will do it too, right? And therefore, David and I and the coalition jointly with our partners, we have said, let us send this signal also from companies in Europe, not only in the US, and let's send it from companies which are not only high margin, low emission, if I may say it, on global tech, but also high emission and low margin. So for all companies, it is a solution. And for all companies to move, it must be simple, it must be actionable, it must be trustworthy, and it has to provide essentially a direction what good looks like. What is non-damaging for the reputation? What is really having a benefit on the ground? And therefore, I guess the work, Julia, you are doing with Symbiosis and the work others are doing in the market to essentially raise the bar for quality is so fundamentally important. And what we aim for is to essentially initiate a European advanced market commitment so that companies in Europe can also take action today. And they can take action easily. And they don't have to create new budgets, right? Because the beautiful thing is you can essentially use your climate agenda through the voluntary carbon market to not only sequester carbon, but also to restore biodiversity and have social impact on the ground. And what we aimed for is today we'll talk to you, and we are glad that the room is full. And we have started on Wednesday doing another workshop in the roundtable, is to jointly create an advanced market commitment for European companies which are collectively buying up to 10 million tons of carbon credit, which are moving along harmonized quality criteria, and which also use, obviously, the joint power to be a reputational shield, let's call it this way. We aim to have 5 companies as founding partners. There are many discussions which are ongoing already, and we open this up to 50 companies in the first topic. I want to say radical collaboration. Any approach which is solid is fantastic. So for companies who want to move now and who want to move fast, they're equally invited to, obviously, to join Symbiosis. There are companies, however, which say, hey, there is a certain communication element which we also want to make our mark. We potentially want to have other criteria than existing coalitions, and we also want to essentially have on the governance side maybe certain elements reflected. And therefore we are saying, hey, there is an offer, a menu in the market you can choose from, and there's one also in Europe. The benefits are very clear, and I make this very tangible. I have no time left, but I go through it anyway. So very tangible, what does it mean? It essentially means that acting through a coalition in purchasing carbon credits, carbon removal credits from nature-based solutions, companies can, A, make sure that they act along high-quality criteria, that they act jointly, there is no reputational, if one gets in the criticism, everyone gets into the criticism for potentially wrongdoing, right? But essentially there is an effective positioning of members also. There's an improved access to high-quality projects. Julia, you talked about that, going jointly into the market, having the purchasing power. It's lower cost. It's also important for some companies. You don't have to hire 2 or 3 FTEs. You can essentially use the coalition at the workbench, and you get better prices also for the carbon credits which you are purchasing in the market. And you can accelerate execution. If you don't want to wait for a European coalition, you can even accelerate further through a Symbiosis. Yeah? Julia invited all of you for a dinner in New York in 2 weeks. Yeah? I'm making this extension again. And what we aim for concretely as a next step is the following. We have used Q3 to talk to many companies already, reputable companies in Germany, but it also should be something European. So we talk to companies in Europe equally. We soft launch in Q4, which means we want to collect and essentially go through an MOU phase and lock in those commitments and make the decision also on the exact scope. And then in Q1 next year, be it January or be it a bit later, to then also officially announce the coalition. So thank you for listening. We hope that we can activate your action, your climate action. We made it, and the design will be in the sense that you can really no new discussions, no new budgets. It's essentially a way to really accelerate climate action in nature in fantastic projects. Contact us. Let's restore nature together, I guess, is the call for action. Thank you very much. And please, a special applause again for Julia. Julia, what time is it? It's still daytime, yeah. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And we will share your contact details so that everyone can contact you if they wish so. Thank you very much for your attention.